Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, unless you're, as long as you're an adult, because YouTube asks me and I have to say yes, this is not appropriate for children. So, anyway, working on the phase converter today, and I'm not really ready to start this project, but I need to order new bearings for the motor, so I'm not sure what bearings it's going to take, so I need to pull down motors anyway, or at least one of the motors, so I thought we might as well get started on this. So let me move the camera down, I'll kind of show you what I got going on. Today's basically going to be a tear down day, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to break the whole setup down, because I'm going to change quite a few things around it. The control box, we're going to use the controls in there, and of course we're going to add some bus bars and add quite a bit of stuff into it, but what I'm going to do is go ahead and disconnect the wiring on each of the motors, and I'm going to disconnect it down here. Initially I was going to disconnect it up on top in the box, but I think I'll just disconnect it down here. The wiring's all going to get changed, and I'm just going to clip the wires. 3 wires to the motor, the black, red, and yellow wire. Doesn't matter what goes where. If your motor's spinning in the wrong direction, why, you just swap any 2 wires and that reverses rotation of the motor. So since I'm going to change them anyway, I'm just going to clip the wires off, since I know the rotation's right the way they are right now. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll pull the control box off and just set it out of the way. I'm not messing with wiring at this point in time. I'm concerned about the motors more than anything else right now, so we're just going to jerk that box out, set it out of the way, and then we know the wiring's relatively right in it because we've already run it here. If you haven't seen this running already, well, I'll put a little link up here in the description. We had the phase converter running when we ran the planer for the first time, and I think we showed it running, and you could hear the howl in it. Like I say, the main thing we're working on today is I want to know which bearings go back in, because if you can hear this, they sound pretty nasty, so we get the bearings replaced in there, and that'll make a big difference. Now, I'm dedicating this to a phase converter. It's never going to be standard motors running again to operate anything, so I'm going to bob off these shafts on this end, just make it a little safer so they're not spinning. When we initially got this running, why, we were spinning the shafts to get them going, and you can start these several different ways. Of course, probably the best way and the most common is we run some capacitors, some start capacitors, to excite the windings, and we get the motor started spinning. You can also take a small 110, or it doesn't matter, 110, 220 motor, a quarter horse, third horse, whatever you've got laying around. You can mount a set of pulleys with some sort of a slack belt arrangement where you can manually tension it a little bit. You start that motor spinning, it spins this, and then you just release the tension on it, take the belt off, whatever the case may be. If you got a little friction pulley on there that you've ran that motor against, you can get it started that way. When we initially ran this, we just took a rope, wrapped it around the shaft when we got ready to start it. I would hit the start button, give the rope a pull, and give it enough inertia that we could get it running. So that works too, but we're going to run it off of start capacitors. We've already proven that I've got the capacitors that I've still got in the box that hadn't been robbed off from either little phase converter. We're using them as the start capacitors, and they work fine. I'm going to use those. So while I've got the motors apart, I'm going to go ahead and bob off those shafts, and that way that'll take care of it. Originally I had expanded metal around it. Now on this side we had a swing out little door so we could access it, but it came up here and over the front, so it protected all of this. So we didn't know what we were going to do exactly, and I had a little shroud on the other side too that protected the other. But with the shafts off flush, there's very little danger of anything happening. The only real danger you've got's electrical hazards. So, and that's not going to matter if you've got a shroud around it or not. So those are going to get bobbed off. When I've got it apart, I'm going to do some modifications to the stand. I'm going to cut this extra off, and I've got a few little brackets that I don't need, and we'll make some changes to the stand just to clean it up, make it a little bit better. What I'm probably going to do is change out this box, and I'm going to find another box at least this size, maybe a little bit bigger, and probably another one just about this size, and I think I'm going to separate it into 2 different units. originally my thought was that I was going to mount my control box back on top of the unit. You run into vibration problems there. So if your motors are running okay, I don't know that that's that much of an issue for this application. And I do like those units all in one unit. You know, I like everything self-contained, but I think for this application what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount my boxes remotely. And I'm going to mount two of them because I think I'm going to mount my capacitors in the smaller box or a separate box. I have seen capacitors explode in the past, and I would prefer to have that contained in its own box where it may just mess up some other capacitors and some wiring and that type of thing, rather than have it explode inside where I'm going to lose some expensive components, you know, some contactors and switches and that type of thing. So I think that's a better route. That way I can also remote it or mount the panel remotely from the phase converter. I have the option of actually mounting the motors outside or in a separate location so we don't have to hear them. You know, I don't know. I don't want it to interrupt any filming we're doing for you guys, and I think maybe that's a better option right now to mount that remotely like that. So we'll see. I'll start searching for electrical components and boxes and that type of thing. Not a big push on this. Like I say, I just needed to get bearings ordered, so I thought we might as well start on it and get it broken down into components that's a little bit easier to handle, because when we get these two 7.5 power motors mounted with the framework and the electronics controls and all that stuff, why, it's a relatively heavy assembly. So now we can put our covers back on here. Now, rather than running wires from here and here all the way up to where our control box is, I'll probably mount another small box here and put a bus bar in there. or however many bus bars we need to run the controls for that. So that way, wherever we run it to, I don't have to interrupt the motor wiring again or get down into the motor wiring. I can just mount it in a box up above, and then we can connect right into that with wherever we've mounted it, wherever our location is. There's the first one. Now I think I have to raise this up or lay it on its back to get the second one loose, because I cut recesses in the bottom to be able to get my socket up into, and there's no way to reach up in there. I can probably just lay it on its back and get them out of there. But these are both electric dynamic motors. They're both the same motor. Yeah, 7.5, 1740 motors. .220 440, 20 amp, and continuous duty cycle. So let me go ahead. I'll get the other one pulled loose, and then we'll get them up on the bench and start breaking them down. For our stand, this is a little expanded metal I had, and our little shroud went around here. I'm going to cut all that off of there, and same way on this side. I've got little brackets, 4 little brackets that I mounted that housing to, or that protective guard to. We're going to do away with that. Now you saw I had my little lifting ring mounted in here, and I built that the same as the threads in the top of the motors. So we just use those for a lifting ring to get them up on the table. You saw me hoist them up there. Hopefully you saw me hoist it up there. So those thread right in. So it works really good. So now we're going to pull this end of the motor off and get this out of the way. And I've already started pulling bolts out here. We have to pull both ends off at once here. And we can see it's been apart before. We've got 2 index punches there and 1 index punch there, so we know which end goes on which. Okay, you want to be careful so you don't damage the internals of your motor. But that's what it looks like inside. And I think we'll go ahead and pull the other end off. That way when we slide it out, we can balance it so we're not dragging it across through there. So we just turn her around and do the exact same thing. That's an awful big bearing in there. We'll go through and price them. The reality is we could take the same ID and OD bore bearing and put a smaller bearing in there, or a narrower bearing, less expensive bearing probably, just because there's no load on it. All it is just a freewheel. So we'll look and see what's available. We'll probably replace them with the exact same thing, but we have other options here. When we originally ran this, we knew that it was loud then, and we knew we had bearings that were way too noisy, and that's why I know how it comes apart, because we took it apart before and repacked the bearings. They're supposed to be a sealed bearing, but nonetheless we went ahead and repacked them, and with hopes that that was going to take care of it, but it didn't. There's the other side. Got a wave washer in the bottom of those to provide tension. Yep, on both sides. Now, very carefully there's our unit. So we're going to bob this end off. So that'll be that one. We'll blow this. Probably don't need that rock in there. Yep, that'll be just fine. We'll take and pull those bearings, or pull one of these bearings, because they are the same bearing, all the way around. We can probably just check our numbers here. Looks to be a MRC 308 SPFC. How about SFFC? MRC is 308 SFFC. That's our number. Boy, those are kind of beat up. They're only a little gritty. Okay, well, here's our motors. Got the shaft shortened up, and we're back assembled. Now, I got the numbers off of the bearings and went in and got the sticker shock on that, so I've got to research that a little bit more, because talking to a couple of guys, well, I've got a couple of different answers and an answer for something that somebody really didn't know. So, anyway, these are the way they look shortened up, and I'm quite happy with that. They're relatively well cleaned up, although when I put the new bearings in them, why we're going to clean up these caps more. Blew out the insides, got them taken care of, and we're about to call it a day. I'm probably going to cut off a little bit of the extra crap on the stand for it, on the mounting bracket that we've got. But otherwise, there's the day's work, and they still go round and round. I can reach underneath and spin them, and everything works as it should. So they're going to work fine once we get new bearings in them and get the electronics set up. Projects and projects, one leads to more. While I got this apart, I went ahead, I ground off the little guard I had on this side. I ground off my tabs on the other side, and I decided I'm going to go ahead and put a set of machine mounts underneath it. And you guys have seen my little hockey puck machine mounts that I build to go underneath all of my lighter weight machines. You know, stuff probably up to 2,000 pounds is fine with these. And they're just made out of a hockey puck. I did a video of those, I don't know how long ago. I'll put a link up here someplace. But anyway, I'm going to use the existing holes on the front to mount the two. On the back, I had to do something to mount them anyway, whether I added some plate underneath. So anyway, I added little kind of outriggers on them, and these aren't fully profiled yet, but they'll, from the side they look like this, and from the bottom they look like that. I'm going to mount one on each side right there just like that, and that'll give me my mounting points on the back end of it. Give it a little bit wider stance, a little more stability, and you know, it'd probably be fine if they were underneath, but the motors extend out about this far, so that it's not, you know, taking up any more space than it would have normally. So I went ahead and kind of ground off the really yucky stuff on here. I'm not going to get too excited about it, but I'm going to go ahead, weld these on, and probably sand it down and throw a coat of paint on it, and then that part of it will be done. I'll still be drilling for a plate up on top, and maybe I'll be welding stuff up there. But anyway, I can go ahead and get this part of it done. The reality is I've still got to change the bearings and do a little motor work, but that's all out in the end. So if I've got the center sections cleaned up and repainted or ready to go, I could go ahead and mount my motors in here, and then when I get the new bearings in, well, I can just pull the ends off right in place and change them right there. So I may go ahead and do that. We'll see how far I get today. But anyway, I'm going to get these mounted up, get it cleaned up, and get a coat of paint on it, and then I'll bring it back and we'll see if we can't get the feet underneath it. Here's where we're at. I think we're ready to mount the motors back in when we get that far, and I don't know if I'll get to that today or not. But anyway, we've got our little brackets welded on the back corners, got our hockey puck feet underneath, and hopefully that'll offer a little vibration dampening for it and quiet it down even a little bit more, and we'll just slowly progress on this project. So hopefully you find it a little bit interesting. Maybe you'll find a little bit of information that's useful for you there, and if you did, I hope you'll hang around and watch the rest of it, and we'll have one or two more parts coming out on this before we've got it done and back up and running. So stay tuned, and any comments or suggestions, leave them in the comments section for me below. And as always, guys, thanks for taking the time to watch.